Thank you for joining today's webinar for agents operating a saleyard. My name's Jodie Rizzo-O'Brien and I'm one of the EID implementation team at the Department of Primary Industries and Regions. Our speaker today is Denise Randell. Denise has worked for Primary Industries and Regions for over 40 years in the fields of livestock production and animal health, based in various roles and locations from the southeast to the west coast. Since 1998, Denise has been involved with animal identification and traceability, firstly with the implementation of electronic identification and the National Livestock Identification Scheme in cattle, and then moving on to the implementation of visual identification of sheep and goats in 2009. Improved identification requirements in pigs in 2017, and now the implementation of electronic identification in sheep and farmed goats. At this time, I'll hand over to Denise. Thanks, Denise.
Good morning, everyone. So today I'll go through, as Jodie said, the requirements for you as you're working as a saleyard operator, not as a agent. It's not when you're acting in operating in a saleyard such as Dublin, Narracourt, Mount Gambier. It's not when you're doing on-farm sales or even assisting producers with their property-to-property sales. This is when you're specifically operating the saleyard. So just to recap on timelines, as of January 1 of this year, all sheep and goats born after that date had to be identified with an electronic EID tag before leaving their property of birth. Processors had to also scan and record the movements of EID identified sheep and goats on the NLIS database. Producers were also required to notify the NLIS database of any property-to-property movements of sheep and farmed goats that have been identified with electronic tags. So that all started off on January 1 of this year. And as from the 1st of July, which is only in a few days' time, any saleyard must scan and record the ID data for any sheep or goats that move through the saleyard of any age. And then at the end of, or the beginning of January in 2027, we will finalise our transition over to electronic ID, and every sheep and goat that moves off a property must be identified with an NLIS accredited electronic tag before moving off the property. The NLIS system is actually underpinned by state and territory laws, and in January of this year, amendments were announced that underpin all of these laws, and those amendments supported changes to sheep and goat tagging, scanning and reporting obligations throughout the sheep and goat supply chain. So this includes saleyard operations as well. The other thing to note is that the changes to the livestock regulations actually reflect the NLIS sheep and goat standards, which were updated in 2024. These sheep and goat standards have actually been around about 10 years now, and they actually outline the obligations of all the different sectors within the sheep and goat supply chain. So a lot of these things in terms of obligations haven't changed. Some timelines have changed, some information has changed, but essentially the responsibilities haven't changed. And the aim of the sheep and goat standards is actually to drive consistency between the jurisdictions or the states and territories so that our laws are all relatively the same. Probably the most notable exception is that Western Australia does require all sheep and goats to have the year of birth colour as a mandatory requirement. So, for instance, anything born this year in Western Australia must have a white tag. It can't have a green tag or a black tag. It must have a white tag, whereas other states don't require that to occur. So just to be very clear, All sheep and goats born on or after January 1 of this year must be identified with an NLIS accredited tag before it leaves the property of birth. And from January 1, 2027, all sheep leaving the property must also be identified with an EID tag. So our timeline again is 1 January, processors had to start doing something. Agents conducting on-farm sales, whether it's a ram sale, a clearing sale, dispersal, flock reduction, all of those sales where electronically tagged sheep were in the consignment. All of those sales had to be recorded with individual IDs. Producers have to do property to property, and from July 1, which is next week, saleyards also have to scan and record the movements on the NLIS database using that for all individually identified sheep. So one of the things that must occur is that the reporting of this sale must be done within 2 days of the actual sale, not 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 days. It must be done within 2 days. So that means that the animals have to be scanned and recorded as an individual movement on the NLIS database. Visually tagged sheep or goats can continue to be recorded as a bond-based movement, but I'll talk a bit more about mixed consignments a little bit later, because there is a way of doing those consignments so that you only actually have to do one upload. But if it's purely visually tagged sheep, you know, all of the animals in the consignment are visually tagged, then those animals can continue to be recorded as a mob-based movement until the 1st of January 2027. So as a saleyard operator, what do you need? Your saleyard must have a property identification code, and that'll be an SK90 number of some description. You'll also have to have an NLIS database account specifically for the saleyard. So in South Australia, those accounts will start with 5 SALE. You'll need scanning equipment, and of course, you'll need compatible software. Now, many of you are probably using AgriNAS software, and you might have been using that for cattle, and it will be a similar situation for those of you who have been using that for cattle. But I know AgriNAS have been providing software training to the various saleyard operators on using it for electronically identified sheep and goats. And you may have been using it also for even just to do your mob-based movement transfers. So what are your responsibilities when operating a saleyard? So it basically means that anything that has an EID tag must be scanned and recorded as an individual movement. The visually tagged animals, particularly if it's a whole consignment, will continue to be recorded as a mob-based movement, and that means that all of the information that's on the NVD, such as other pics, for instance, whether the animals have been on the property for 2 months through to over 12 months, or if it's a vendor bred animal, all of that information still must be recorded on the database. All of the movements must be uploaded to the database within 2 days of the sale, and this includes any animals that are passed in or are returned home. The other thing is that this is a saleyard movement. It's not a property to property, so you must do it as a saleyard transfer. A property movement doesn't give us the information in terms of the fact that there are animals being congregated at a site, so that's why it has to be done as a saleyard movement, which is very important to know if we're doing a disease investigation. The other thing is that any other untagged animals must be retagged at the saleyard with a saleyard post-breeder tag, which is the pink post-breeder tag. In the transition period, it might be a case of using EID, so for this year's lamb drop, or if it's an older animal, you could still use a visual tag. So it will depend a little bit on what age group of animals, but you will need to have a supply of saleyard post-breeder tags to identify any sheep or lamb born after January 1, 2025. The other thing is that producers can't send in a supply of tags for the animals to be tagged at the saleyard. That's a practice that is actually illegal, and we've always discouraged it simply because there have been instances in the past where, in cattle, I must admit, but the wrong producer's animals have been tagged with someone else's tags, and in terms of a disease traceback, that makes it very difficult for us. If your vendor or client has for some reason send in untagged animals, they are required to get a permit so that it becomes a legal movement as opposed to an illegal movement. But those animals will then have to be tagged at the vendor's expense. And in terms of the cost of the tags, that is up to you as the sale operator to determine what that cost is for the vendor. So that's not something that the department regulates. It's something that you've got a control over. The other important thing is that if animals arrive dead or die in the yards or have to be euthanized, those animals must also be recorded on the NLIS database. And that is an important part of traceability. And also it helps you reconcile the numbers of what you receive according to the NVD with what you transfer. And when you do have animals that have died in transit or in the yards, then you actually transfer them to deceased. And as saleyard operators, many of you would have been doing that with the mob-based movement as well anyway. So it's not, as I said before, we're actually not changing what you do, we're changing basically the information that you actually present to the database. So mixed consignments, this is something that there have been quite a few questions about. We know that from January 1 this year through to the 1st of January 2027, you're likely to receive animals from a client which has got a mixture of animals that have got electronic IDs and visual tags. And it could range from basically 0% electronics through to 100% electronics. We realise that that's going to happen. You'd need to make sure that you've got a process for managing the animals to ensure that you get accurate recording, but you will actually be able to upload those mixed consignments to the NLIS database as one transaction because the database will allow you to enter the number of head in the consignment or the pen, whichever, or lot, and allow you to attach the electronic IDs to that particular transfer. So you might have 100 animals in a pen, for instance, but only 60 of them have got electronic IDs. So you can update the database with that information. One of the things that we're reminding you, saleyard operators about is that basically, if you're getting consignments of sheep or lambs from Victoria, then all of those consignments will be electronically identified. Victoria has been using electronic ID since 2017, so our expectation is that all of those sheep will be tagged with EID and they will be required to be scanned. And definitely all 2025 drop lambs will be EID tagged, and they should all be basically 100% tagged. And as I said, we realise that there will be some older sheep where you could be getting a mixture of visual and EID tags. So what information do you have to put up to the database? Well, it's going to include things like the date of the sale, the saleyard ID, the pick of the vendor's property, the electronic ID of the stock and the consignment, including any saleyard tags that have been applied, the destination pick, the total number of goats in the sheep or goats in the consignment, any tags that from sheep or goats that have died in transit or in the saleyard, and the movement document serial number or the NVD serial number. So a lot of that information is information that you've been uploading for several years now. The most important thing is that the electronic ID is the new piece of information that you'll be uploading. So in terms of movement document, just as a reminder, all sheep movements to a different pick must have a sheep health declaration. The National Goat Health Declaration is voluntary, but it is something that we do recommend for producers to complete those declarations. Or they might have another movement document, but most saleyards prefer that they get the vendor declaration. And it must be provided by the vendor prior to the sale. So if you have clients that don't send in their vendor declaration with the animals, you need to make sure that you've got it before you start selling the animals. Where the sheep and goats have a food safety, biosecurity or market eligibility status, and this might be identified on the movement document or MVD, or it actually may even be on the NLIS database. You must inform the buyer or make the buyer aware that there is a problem or a potential problem before the sale of the animals. So that might mean that you make a pre-sale catalogue available to all of the buyers, or have the NVDs available to the buyers prior to the sale, or you might make an announcement when you start selling that particular pen or group of pens. And it could be something, like the animals are still within a withholding period or export slaughter interval, or it might be another status entirely. One of the things in the National Livestock Identification System is that we are, with electronic tags, able to put statuses on animals for particular things. In the cattle industry, it's been used quite extensively for things like lead, beef measles, certain vaccinations, organochlorines, for instance. Those things have been used in the cattle industry for the last 20 years. In the sheep and goat industry, those statuses haven't been as prevalent, but into the future there may be statuses that could be used, and they would be notified on the movement documentation that you'd receive as a saleyard operator. One of the things that has changed or is changing, and I'm not sure if every saleyard has created a MyMLA account. Into the future, no matter what type of account, so even my own departmental account, I have had to link it to a MyMLA account. So for producers, they can link together their NLIS database account, their LPA account, the Meat Standards Australia account, a whole range of other accounts under MyMLA. As a saleyard operator, you need to make sure that your saleyard database account is linked to a MyMLA account. This will then allow you to get access to any electronic NVDs for stock consigned to the saleyard. And into the future, you won't be able to use your database account without having a MyMLA account linked to it. So please make sure that that happens as soon as possible. I know we're talking about saleyard accounts or saleyard operating as a saleyard, but just a few things about agent picks. The livestock agent or their agency office may have a agent property ID code which is registered with PIRSA. Animals can only be transferred to the agent pick on the database if the destination pick is unknown at the point of sale. So if your selling agent or the buying agent tells you that they don't know the destination pick at the point of the sale, you can transfer those animals to their agent pick. And then the agent must notify the database within 2 days of the correct buyer's pick. And the agent livestock can't be transferred from an agent pick to another agent pick, saleyard or abattoir. So these are only for use for animals that an agent may be selling or buying at a saleyard and can't be used for interim movements from property to property, for instance. So that's just a reminder about agents' picks. In your saleyard accounts, there's just a couple of things on the NLIS database that you need to be aware of. You may have just had in the past sheep mobs or goat mobs linked to your account. So you can change that. It's a fairly easy change. If you log into your database account, when it asks you on the main page what you want to do today or what species you want to work with, if you don't find, say, sheep individual as one of the livestock types that you want to work with, then you need to select in the drop-down menu, change my types of livestock, and that will be about the second option that you've got in the drop-down menu. And then it will come up with a list, so it will have cattle, sheep individual, sheep mobs, goat individual. And it also does have South American camelids, but they're not going to be going through the saleyard. Some producers do have their alpacas identified with NLIS devices specifically issued for alpacas. So they are out there being identified with electronic ID too. One of the things that I also suggest that you get into the habit of doing is to check what I call the ERP status of the pick or the extended residue program status of the pick. Now that gives you quite a bit of information that might be valuable to you. So it will tell you whether the pick is active or disbanded. It'll tell you the LPA status of the property. And if there are any issues on farm, it'll give you a pick or a device status. So all of those things can be checked. And if you're getting new clients through selling sheep, or someone that you haven't dealt with for quite some time, you might want to check their PIC on this. And it's quite a simple thing that when you get the drop down box, you can put in as many PICs as you want, and it will actually return you some information about those PICs. So it will tell you, like in this first instance here for SA100060, it's telling me that that PIC is no longer active on the database, and it could be that, you know, they haven't renewed their PIC, or it could be that someone sent in a consignment on an MVD that for a property they've sold, for instance. So this one is not accredited. The LPA is not accredited. The PIC itself is disbanded. Then you'll see further down that a number of these PICs all come up as all C with a status code of C, which is clear no test, so there are no residue or disease issues known on the property that results in a status, and it is LPA accredited, so it's LPA with a status of A. And on here you'll also see that there's one here that says HRG. That means that that particular property has been accredited for harvested rangeland goats. So it's quite a important check. And as I said, if there's any way that you can do some new clients or clients that you haven't seen for quite some time prior to the sale day, that gives you a good idea of what their status is. Errors and warnings. I really recommend that you look at these and sort out any issues at the time. We do get requests to try and correct something that happened 6 months or 12 months ago, and sometimes that can actually be very difficult to achieve. So it is really important to deal with them at the time. One common one that has been found in the cattle industry, and I have no doubt that will occur in the sheep and goat industry, is that an animal has been recorded as dead, or it's been moved to another property at a date after the date that you're using in the transfer. So that's why you might get the error message. Particularly if the animal is recorded as dead, it's something that you probably needs to be dealt with as soon as possible, because obviously the animal is alive and kicking and in the saleyard, unless someone has got a whole stack of dead tags in their back pocket, but hopefully not. We do get requests quite regularly to resurrect animals because someone has transferred them to deceased. So please make sure that if that happens, then you get contact with either the department to resurrect the animal or Integrity Systems Company. Now, during the transition period, there are likely to be a lot more warning messages for sheep and goats. But the main thing is that when you're uploading information, if you make sure that you're putting in all the correct information, that'll make life a lot better. The warning will come back because something isn't matching on the database. The transfer will have gone through, but you might have put the wrong vendor pick in. The pick that you entered as the vendor pick or the buyer pick could be invalid, or it's been cancelled. So those types of warning messages, you really do need to make sure that it is corrected. And then, as I said, before you go correcting something, particularly if you haven't done a lot of transfer corrections, make sure, one, you've got the correct info. If you don't feel confident with correcting it, then contact NLIS support on 1-800-683-111, because you only get one go basically at correcting a warning or an error, and then it has to come back to the state or integrity systems to correct. So please make sure that you've got the correct information if you are attempting to correct it. And on here are some of the key contacts that you can contact in terms of the department about NLIS transfer. So it's Tara Vandeleur and myself. Jody will probably refer you to myself or Tara. Integrity systems, but also in terms of staying informed about what's happening in EID, then you can also subscribe to get our updates from the department.
Has anyone got any questions? I've got a couple that were submitted that have come that we had pre-webinar. Denise, one was around, well, we had two questions regarding this. This is about mixed tag consignments, particularly where we've got sheep and or farmed goats that were born pre-January 2025. What do we need to do rescanning and transferring those animals?
Okay, for those consignments, as I said, you can do one transfer. In the transfer that goes through the database now, there has been some, I suppose, smarts developed in that you can put in the number of head in the consignment or that pen or lot, whatever, and then attach the list of EID tags. So if it's 100 animals and only 60 of them are tagged with electronic IDs, that'll send the information up that those, it'll do both the mob-based movement transfer plus the electronic transfer. So it's trying to make sure that the transfer goes through as simply as possible for you and that you're not having to do two actual transfers. You will receive 2 emails back for it because the database does actually have the smarts to do the transfer as both electronic and a mob-based movement. Okay?
Great. And if you've got any further issues with that, Denise and Tara's details, I'll pop that back up. Contact details are there. Absolutely got questions about NLIS, contact Tara and or Denise. They're happy to answer those. And as Denise said, I will refer you back to those two. Happy to help out with some other questions, but yeah, please refer those ones to Denise. Next one, Denise, is can animals be read on farm for special sheep sales?
If the animals are coming into the sale yard, they really do need to be read at the sale yard. To try and do it on farm would be actually quite difficult and probably make your life a lot harder, because you would then have to try and transfer all the information through to your sale yard software and also keep them in whatever selling lots they are in. So it would probably make life a lot harder. If you mean a special sale as in a circuit sale, that's actually not considered a sale yard in the sense that it's going to a sale yard site. That will be done as a property to property sale through your agent account, not the sale yard account. So if there's any further clarification, get in touch with me about that one, okay?
Excellent, thank you. Denise, the other one I might just get you to recap on, and we have a lot of questions that come through about this, is about the year of birth colours.
Okay. In terms of year of birth, South Australia, like most of the other states, say it's voluntary. So this year, for instance, the year of birth colour is white. Producers could use white every year that they wanted to if that's the case, because that's the colour of tags they've purchased. So it's voluntary. It's not mandatory to use the colours in the sequence that they occur in. So, this year's white, last year was black, the previous year was blue. Producers do not have to use them in that particular sequence if they don't want to. So as long as they use, if the animals are born on property, then they must use one of those 8 colours. So it's the red, yellow, orange, light green, blue, purple, white and black. They must use one of those colours to indicate that the animals were born on the property. And then they would use a pink post-breeder tag. For instance, if an animal has, say, lost its electronic tag and it is no longer on the property of birth. And we use that for tracing purposes as well. So it's really important that the right type of tag is used on the animals.
Excellent. And the 3 colours which are not NLIS accredited are?
Grey, brown and dark green.
Thank you. I've had a question this week about that one. So, yeah, great to reiterate that one. And if you've got questions about NLIS and any of those movements, please reach out to Denise and Tara in that. Other questions about the program, happy to take your call or your emails to myself. So please feel free to reach out with questions to any one of the 4 of us. I thank everyone for joining us for today's webinar. Denise, thank you for sharing your presentations. As Denise said, please subscribe to our mailing list because you'll get the updates about anything that's changing within the EID space and an update, so you can easily do that there. Thanks for your time and everyone have a great day.